Okay, awesome. Our wonderful group looked at Estero Park. As our mission statement, we came up with Estero Park is a vibrant, multi-use space that brings together the diverse and multi-generational surrounding community to interact, enjoy, and grow. Kind of a lot of what we were thinking about there is if you look at who lives around Estero Park, it is very mixed among students and families, which is really cool. I actually live right in that neighborhood. It's a great place to live. What we did is we looked at the park and came up with 10 areas, or actually 11, but around 10. So we were looking at the front of the park, where there's the parking lot, the large field, the teen center, which is a huge asset there, the entrance, we have a barn with some storage area there, the large community garden. We have TP Village Park here, which is connected. We have here the basketball courts, which was 7, and then we had there's a playground area with a BMX little mount there, and then we had the right down here the rear entrance, and there's parking there, and then the disc golf course. So there's a lot going on in this park. So we looked at all those areas and came up with some strengths and things that we would like to see improved. I'll start off with the parts that me and Rosalinda looked at, which was first Area 5, which is the TP Village area. So there, right now, there's some disc golf, and obviously it's connected to the rest of the park. So we wanted to sort of hopefully make it more connected with the parks with some better pathways. And it's a great way to cut through, but at night there is no lighting. And actually that street, Swenyo Road, is very dark in that area. So possibly we could get more lighting either in the park or on the borders to make it a little more functional and safe at night. And then a defined entrance to the park so people know where they're going. Then we also looked at Area 9, which was our community garden, which is just such a big resource. But my first year when I lived here, I lived just right across the street from this building, and I didn't even know there was a community garden there. So for a lot of the features in this park, since there are so many, it would be great to have more identification. Also, what we had there was have some agricultural education programs, just because there's a lot. Healthy eating examples and awareness. Better incorporation with the teen center programs, built off of the proximity to the garden. Also, we could have some seasonal events like a pumpkin patch or something related to the time of year. And for a lot of people who use this community garden, for those of you who don't know, it's like divided up into small plots, and people can use it reserve it for a year for a pretty affordable price, though there is a long waiting list just because there's a lot of demand for it. So for some people, that may be the one place they go in the community other than their apartment. So we could have some like bulletin boards just so people could know what's going on. That would be really good. And then we also spoke about how we could maybe have some drought-friendly plants along the path leading there. So that's what we thought about the garden. And then one more. Over here, we looked at this part. So this is the rear entrance of the park, and it's not very defined from the street. You could kind of imagine that there's the park there and see it, but we would love to have this kind of a more grand entrance just right there. And in order to do that, we would like to hopefully take out some of the parking that's there. Because right now, I mean, if you go on the street, obviously you can't drive anywhere. It's just for parking. So perhaps we could have more slanted parking spots to free up the area there. And just sort of incorporate that, make it more user-friendly. Maybe have events there, because it's a wide space, farmers market or some festivals. But yeah, that's what we discussed.
Do you want to talk about the field a little bit? We also, there's 11-ish areas here, but we sort of starred maybe like 4 or 5 that we thought people would be best to start with and leverage from there.
Yeah.
It's a huge space.
So Josh and I talked about the teen center, which was just remodeled, right? I think it was, so it's pretty new. the parking lot here, the soccer field, and what was our other one? Oh, the shaded area right behind the teen center. So these are all really sort of key spaces to Estero Park in general. One thing we wanted to do is to identify the teens as really important leaders and stakeholders within this space. And so sort of blurring this boundary a little bit more between the teen center and the shaded space, and potentially putting a picnic area out back here for teens or children, like a sort of like a children's playground if parents are coming into the teen center and doing activities there where kids could sit out back there. But then also using this shaded area as a multi-use space for arts programming and music. So I know that there's some storage there through Parks and Rec. So keeping that because it seems to be used for that and really useful. But also activating, there's a barn here that used to hold music performances. And so it'd be interesting to activate that, like sort of history of that space to bring back musicians and potentially performance artists there. And Josh and I were talking about ways to highlight the teens more as leaders. So using the creativity that they already have, and potentially I'm ad-libbing here, I'm sorry, that they could be in charge of that programming or have a say in who comes into that space, what kind of musicians, what kind of artists are playing in that space. Having sort of modular temporary seating under here too for performances that could be moved out to this area. So if there were ever food trucks coming into this parking area, if we built up more picnic tables here, that there could also be shaded modular temporary seating there. Yeah, so food trucks, potentially a farmer's market here, signage, like, you know, so I've driven down this road so many times and seen this field but have never known about the community garden, the BMX, the disc golf. So having signage in English and Spanish, that just is a, you know, a beacon to tell you what's going on in this space. Figuring out a little bit more parking here, not only for cars but also bikes, because this is such a highly used bike path. Connecting to the bike station that you guys were talking about before. And then obviously the big field here, it's already used as a soccer field, so making sure that we prioritize it for that use because community members are already using this space in that way. But also potentially putting in seating areas so that, you know, if your friend is playing soccer or your husband or wife is playing soccer, you can sit there and watch it. There's things for families to do while people are playing soccer. Along those lines, somebody brought up the idea yesterday of having a track around this space or a walking path. So, you know, you could walk your kid in a stroller, or people could go sort of around this space while still maintaining it for soccer and other cultural events that are there. So you were saying about Dia de los Niños and other events that already use this space as well. Yeah, I don't know, anything I missed? Cool. Yeah, so.
Just highlighting one or two more things, just so folks know, for each of the areas, we also have a little box that includes stakeholders, because we got a lot of feedback about, oh, the basketball courts, let's light them, but only till like 8 p.m. because Ethan knew that there are kids nearby. And so just to make sure that, like, oh, neighbors, Ivy, Parks and Rec, Teen Center, we identified stakeholders for each area. We had talked about putting a bike fix-it station in, but I mentioned I gave a shout out to Jonathan because I know he was one of the key people that got them on campus, but that includes inflating, like, so there's a bike path and there's basketball and soccer, and so you can use that to inflate balls just the center. And we talked about water stations and where those could go. This is a really big apartment complex that doesn't have any windows facing this side, so the walls could be murals, and the stakeholders there would be the landlords. There's also a wall here with a couple of little bottleneck entryways, and I was thinking, what if you opened that up so that, like, almost each parking lot could be a corridor into the park, and that could raise the value of this property, but also have an interface there. So the landlords would be the folks to do some partnering with on that too. And we also had a poem. And this is our slogan, which is growing communities, and a poem.
Oh, so the poem is by Robert Lax, and it's basically, it's very simple. Turning the jungle into a garden without destroying a single flower. Because we felt like it was really important to hold ideas of transformation while refraining from harm and threat.
Can you say that one more time?
Turning the jungle into a garden without destroying a single flower.
Got it.
And there's a lot more, but those are in our notes, and Yeah, so.
And really quickly, just one last thing. We talked a lot about this area as parking, and there are students living out of their cars there. There are houseless folks there as well. So keeping that in mind as we think about transforming this space, but bringing them into the conversation and thinking about them as well.
Great.